What is up, everybody? The New York Islanders have done it. Not only have they scored an empty net goal for the first time this year and the first time in 65 games, but they won consecutive games for the seventh time this season with a 5-3 win over the Detroit Red Wings. It was not a great game, but let's dive into this one, starting things off with Matthew Barzal. You look back to Monday's overtime win, 3-2 against the Dallas Stars. Matthew Barzal with a legendary shift in overtime, eventually setting up Bo Horvat for the game winner. They come to Detroit here, and then in Detroit in the third period, where the Islanders blow their second third period lead, Matthew Barzal kind of stepped on a shot, got beat, Mata left wide open, they score. I'm not blaming the goal on Barzal, but it does happen. However, with 6:02 left on the clock, Barzal wins a puck in the corner or just jumps on a puck in the corner, banks it off line and in, and it serves as the game winner. His 18th goal of the year, his career high is 22, and he's been impressive. I mean, you saw against Dallas where he said, I really wanted to get the 2 points. I really wanted to win that puck battle. He put his team on his back. And tonight he comes through in a critical moment. Moving on now to the blown leads. For the 20th time this season, the Islanders have blown a third period lead. Take that a step further. For the 38th time this season, the Islanders had a 2-goal lead in a game. For the 29th, I believe, time now, the 28th, they've allowed that next goal, and it's been tough. I mean, you look at Patrick Waugh coming in. There was a honeymoon phase where the team was playing better, but the second period wasn't great. The Islanders had to shake it off. They allow the Mata goal, make it 2-1, and then in the third period, 10 seconds in, they allow an odd man rush with Patrick Kane, Showtime Patrick Kane, who's been red hot, right? And what happens is Adam Pelech steps, Pajot gets back, but instead of Pajot staying on Patrick Kane, he decides to go to the other side where Dobson was already covering the pass, and it was bad. Gave Patrick Kane too much time to find his spot blocker side and scores the goal. And then, like I said, you look at Mata's goal where the Islanders got pinned in their zone. Matt Martin struggled there. Barzal tries to step to block a shot, a great fake. And Mata cuts in from the left circle and beats Sorokin. And the first goal that he scored on Sorokin kind of snuck under Sorokin's pad. The puck came around the boards. It was really weird. But, it was just another situation where the Islanders just fell apart. That being said, under Lane Lambert, I don't know how many times they came back after blowing two leads. I mean, you look at the one that stands out to me is the Calgary Flames game. I believe they blew the lead twice in the third period before Wallstrom won in a shootout. But yeah, the Islanders needed 2 points. And now with the 2 points, this is what happens now with the playoff picture. And everyone can say the Islanders are out of it. And then one night, 2 points, 4 points over the last 2 games. They're back in this thing. They're 6 points back of Tampa Bay Lightning who hold down the second wildcard spot with 3 games in hand. And they are 5 points back to the Flyers with 1 game in hand. Now the Islanders host the Boston Bruins Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. If you thought that game was a day game, it was a couple of weeks ago or months ago, but the league changed it to make it a night game. And now that's a huge one. You can talk about a couple other people before we get to questions and comments here, is that Ilya Sorokin was great in this game. Take away that first Mata goal that he probably wants back. Clutch saves in big moments. Yeah, the post probably helped him, stopping Patrick Kane at the glove side post there on a stretch effort, but he was good in big moments. He came away with some big time saves. Pierre Engvall on that Cizikas line. I mean, I wrote about it yesterday of why that line could work. Cizikas has running mates, especially with Engvall, where there are 2 guys that are really fast, can get up the rink, and that provides more support where Cizikas could be effective in the offensive zone. And tonight, Cizikas makes it 2-0 on a deflection. Hard work from that line entirely. And then Pierre Engvall scoring the Islanders' first empty net goal of the year. Shocker. Assisted by Casey Cizikas and Simon Holmes from that line's got 3 goals in 2 games because they set up the Pulock goal on Monday. That line was good. Again, I'm liking what Waz doing in terms of limiting minutes, things like that, really playing that top line hard. And again, the Islanders have to get points. They have to go on a run here. That's what Patrick Waugh said, I think, after they won the Dallas game, his first game behind the bench, January 21st. He said, we got to go on a run if we're going to make the playoffs. And 2 wins in a row isn't a streak by definition, but you got to rely on Sorokin. And someone asked me pregame, who's my X factor? It's cliche to say a goalie, but if the Islanders are going to make the playoffs, Ilya Sorokin's going to have to steal some games. You look at that Boston Bruins game on Saturday, really talented Bruins team. That's a game where you need Sorokin, if he's starting, we're expecting him to, or whoever's in goal, to find a way to keep you in that game and allow the offense to flourish. Again, the Islanders are scoring goals. It's about playing strong defense. I thought the first period was excellent. The Islanders didn't allow a 5-on-5 shot. So I think 4-11 or something around there to go in the first period. And then second, they knew the push was coming. They just struggled at certain times, making key mistakes. And then the third period, it was survive. And again, they didn't just survive. They found a way to score, to go ahead, blow it, but they kept going. They kept fighting. And that's what Waugh needs to see. And he said We'll go back home, play the Boston Bruins. You also talked about the Swedish connection for Engvall and Holmstrom. Again, two guys that are fast that can play with Zizekas, touched on that. So overall, not a great game, but when you don't play your best game and you still find a way to come away with 2 points against a team that was on a 6-game winning streak, that's got to feel good. The Islanders take both of their games on this mini road trip. Again, Boston Bruins Saturday night at 7:30. With that, let's get to as many questions, comments as we can get to before we wrap this thing up. So we'll kick things off here with, let's go Matt Riviori. We'll start things off here. He said, Roy said post-game that Sorokin wasn't a factor. He kept repeating how the guys in front of him played well. I know we only allowed 26 shots, but those comments warranted? I think what Waz trying to do there is not give Sorokin all the credit. I think it's more of a comment to the team around him. Again, Sorokin, that goal from Mata, that first one, probably can't go in really deep. The Kane one's not his fault. I mean, certainly can save it on a 2-on-1. That's probably been his kryptonite this entire career, is that blocker side shot. But I don't think when I asked Waz about his goaltending after one of the games, and he said, I'm never going to talk badly about our goalies. We have 2 amazing goalies. So I think this was a situation where he wanted to just make a point that, yeah, Sorokin was good, but the reason we won was because of the way we played in front of him. So I wouldn't take too much consideration into that. Moving up next to Flabottom. It's probably a good thing they are playing the Bruins next. After wins against 2 good teams, they lose to a bottom dweller if they had them next. I mean, yeah, you look at the Rangers, 9 wins in a row, right? Or is it 10? And then they lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But the Boston Bruins is another test. The Islanders for sure have to beat the teams behind them, for sure have to beat the teams they're chasing. The Boston Bruins are a legitimate team, obviously a top team. The Islanders played them in Boston, obviously earlier in the year here, and they were with them. They were pretty close there. They allow a power play goal. I remember Holmstrom scores shorthanded, then that same power play, the Bruins score. They ended up blowing it open and losing, and the Islanders were right there. The Islanders showed that they could play with the Bruins, and they just couldn't hold on. It's a huge game in front of your home crowd where the Islanders haven't been amazing. Right, Patrick Waz talked about how they need their efforts to be better. You look at the Flame game at home. Look at the Kraken game at home. Tampa wasn't a bad home game, but they just lost that one. So the Islanders returning home to face the Bruins. Huge test for a group that's got to be feeling good about themselves after 2 straight wins. Moving on here to John Smith. Their first period surges followed by second period collapses are becoming far too regular. You have to figure this out. Yeah, for sure. You have to find a way to play a complete game. And everyone says, oh, you got to play 60 minutes. The Islanders never play 60 minutes. No team plays 60 minutes. There's always a push. It's just about weathering that storm. And again, the Islanders didn't weather the storm enough in the second period, allowing that goal. And then early in the third, again, that push. And the Islanders' structure is good enough when they're playing Waz system to pretty much not allow much. We saw it in the first period. Again, this wasn't a weak team the Islanders were facing. This is a Red Wings team trying to get back into the playoffs. A Red Wings team that had won 6 straight games, who have outscored their opponents 14-4 over their last 2 games. 14-4. And the Islanders, again, sure, they allow 3 goals in this one, but again, 14-4. So I think for the Islanders, yes, it wasn't a great second period, but it's much better to build on that and look at that and cut the film and things like that when you find a way to win. It could have been their downfall. They could have allowed the goal to Manta and then collapsed, or they could have allowed the second goal to Manta, right, and just collapsed and things like that. And the Islanders, again, you could say they collapsed because they blew the lead, but we've seen them collapse and lose these games in regulation. If they had lost this game in regulation, that would have been a tough pill for them to swallow. If they lost in overtime, it would have been a tough pill as well. But they found a way to rally, get the big goals, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters at this point in the season. You just win the games and move forward. Taylor says, this game has to put them as a buyer at the deadline, right? First off, I think they were buying regardless, but the more games they win, now with 3 games left before the deadline, you bet you know what, Lou is going to look to add. Now, there was news today that Tarasenko will be willing to waive his no-trade clause to go to a Stanley Cup contender, which might take the Islanders out of the running for Tarasenko. Again, I don't think the Islanders are a Cup contender. In this situation, they might not even make the playoffs. But, yeah, Lou looks at this win. Again, every win's going to dictate things, right? How much of a buyer is he going to be? We've talked about it a lot. He has to sell first. That Pajot contract is really killing them. I mean, Palmieri, sure, but Palmieri's been obviously scoring goals and things like that. Pajot's contract at $5 million, you probably got to find a way to get him off the books. With Nelson going back to the 2C, you have McLean, you have Zizekas thriving as a 3C. So they got to find a way to move the Pajot, whether it's in a deal for somebody or in a separate deal. Maybe use a team to take on a contract like Arizona or Chicago. But I still think Anthony Duclair could be on the table at San Jose. I think, again, Oliver Wahlstrom being a healthy scratch for a second straight game. The Islanders don't have cap space. They don't have a roster spot. He's not going to get a chance to be a top 6 guy here. You'd rather trade him now or trade him at the draft before losing him probably if you don't tender him a qualifying offer this summer. But I think Duclair, again, played for Patrick Waugh. If you didn't catch one of my later articles on the Hockey News, Duclair played 2 years under Waugh in juniors. Not sure if their relationship is good. I'm gonna assume they are. I haven't heard anything bad about that. But Duclair provides that speed, that depth forward that maybe the Islanders could use. You could put him on the top line. There's other guys around the league as well, but the Islanders have to be smart. Duclair makes $3 million a year. Again, it's a game right now, a money game. The Islanders could move Wahlstrom. Again, that's $800,000 and change because of his qualifying offer. That would give them around $935,000 or maybe a little more than that. But again, they have to activate Hudson Fasching off LTIR if they want to. He makes $775,000. And again, I don't think we're going to see a Matt Martin get waived, things like that. But these are the tough decisions that Lou now has to make because he signed players to long-term deals. And right now the Islanders need goal scoring. You could say they need stronger defenders as well. Maybe getting a two-way forward isn't the worst idea. Not a rental because Lou doesn't do those, but maybe get a player. Don't sign him immediately. Wait till the end of the season and say, hey, let's figure something out here. But if the Islanders don't have to give up a first-round pick, that's going to be probably what they want to do. That being said, I don't think Lou's going to hesitate to move the first if it allows them to get a player to help them now and next year or the years to come. Moving on here to Chinny Chin Chin. Zeker's deflection was a beaut. Listen, for Casey Cizikas, he doesn't score a lot. I mean, yes, he had that 20 goal a year, and then the following year he was on pace for, I think, 17 or 18 goals. When he scores goals, they're usually really nice goals. I remember the diving ones a couple years ago, I think against Pittsburgh, he had a diving backhand goal. He scores really nice goals, but tonight the deflection's a really good one you want to see. The hand-eye coordination, the tracking of the puck, the way he sneaks that in short side. I mean, every deflection's tough, and sometimes it's just the puck hitting the stick and your stick being in the right spot. But to get it on the shaft, he did have his stick, essentially the toe above the crossbar, but it doesn't matter. It's where it hits the stick. And I thought that was a really smart deflection. Whether it was intentional or not, it's still a goal. Moving on here to John Smith. Nelson has to stay on that first line. The second and both fourth line wingers need a refresh. I agree with you for now until you find a 2C or you move Pajot, whatever the case may be. Yeah, Brock Nelson's got to be there. He's got 5 goals over his last 6 games. But that being said, I think if you go and get a winger for that line, even with speed or anything like that, that works. Because I don't think right now Pajot and that line is going to cut it as a second line. I'm not blaming Pajot. Again, it's just it's nothing personal with him. It's just cap. If you want to upgrade your team, Pajot's contract is probably the one out the door because of McLean. You got to credit Kyle McLean. He's done everything right to earn a spot. Whether he went undrafted, whether you believe in nepotism to some extent, which I think is complete BS, but you do you if you believe that. He's been great. And he's making, I believe he's making $800,000. So you have a $5 million center who does pretty much, I mean, McLean's, again, 9 games at the NHL level. Pajot's a much better player, is a proven player, but the potential for McLean to be the same player Pajot is, making significantly less money, like $4.2 million less money, that's huge for this team if they want to be able to bring players on. Dufour has been a healthy scratch the last couple of games. Please don't go. I don't know if I don't know if Dufour is going to be traded. I know it's been a struggle this year. I know he missed some time due to personal reasons early in the year. He hasn't really figured it out at this point. Players like Matthew Maggio, to me, have surpassed him. I think Maggio is your next call-up. If it's not Ishikov finally getting a chance, I think if the Islanders need someone gets hurt, right? One, I think Fasching is going to go in for whoever it is. I could see Fasching being in next game. I mean, then again, 2 wins in a row, you probably don't change anything. But I think Dufour is not, he took the stride we saw at development camp. Wow, this guy not only has tremendously taken strides with his first step, tremendously taken strides with his stride, but it was above average. I mean, he was blowing past guys during drills. He had the confidence, and I think he lost it. At some point in the NHL season this year, he just lost the confidence, not doing much. You're not seeing him at all do anything, really. And Maggio is a guy for me who's go to work, and the guy's just gone to work. He's put in the time and effort, obviously, off the ice. Talked to him over the summer. He was going to the gym twice a day. I mean, I don't know if it doesn't sound like that's a thing that most athletes usually do, is going to the gym twice a day, but he has that, what I call that dog in him, to take the expressions of the younger folk. But yeah, Maggio's been impressive this year for what he's been able to do, especially late. And I think he's one of those guys. We saw it during development camp, training camp, and preseason that he's this guy that could fit into an NHL lineup because he does the basic things that McLean does. And he's got offensive upside. I think he has more offensive talent than McLean does. He has top 6 offensive talent. The question will be Maggio's play away from the puck, which is usually the question mark for a lot of these young guys. But for the Islanders, whose prospect system is barren, to see a guy that was taken in the 5th round maybe develop into a bottom 6 guy that could really help you is so huge. Isles fan. For the deadline at 3 p.m. this is Friday, March 8th, at 3 p.m., can teams not trade, or is that when the trades begin to flow? Oh, so that's the deadline, which means that it has to be in the NHL's office by 3 p.m. Now, usually here trades trickle in 3:15, 3:30, right? They get announced, but once the clock hits 3 o'clock, if there are no trades that are in the NHL's front office, and I don't think they have to be approved, they just have to be in, then they get approved. That's all good. Moving on here to Steve Bushutsky. An Islanders Twitter account last week called Isles Talk tweeted that they confirm Isles have held talks with San Jose and Ottawa. Have you heard anything about that? First off, again, if Isles talk, I don't know what the Twitter account is. Do not believe, you know who you can trust. And quite frankly, again, I said this last show and I'll explain it again. I'm very fortunate to have some connections in terms of sources from around the NHL. And when I've broken stuff in the past, I'll be honest, it has never come from the Islanders side of things. It is chats being talked about around the league, or it's coming from the other team involved in the trade. So I cannot say whether that person is right in terms of hearing anything of who the Islanders talked to. I do know that there was some activity reaching out to the Ottawa Senators. Now, again, there's a lot of guys in the Ottawa Senators that the Islanders should be interested in. I've not heard anything about Anaheim or San Jose. What I will say, though, is that the Duclair thing makes tremendous amount of sense to me. So if they are talking to San Jose, which they, again, I can't deny or confirm that report that they reached out to San Jose, but what I can say is that Duclair for Wallstrom and maybe a 5th makes too much sense for me. In terms of Anaheim, you have Adam Henrique, you have Toronto. The Islanders should have reached out to them. So again, that could just be speculating from that account, trying to glean clout. I don't know who people know. And quite frankly, he might have a source that's saying one thing that might not even be connected at all. So I definitely know who to trust. But if anyone's saying they heard the Islanders have reached out and they try to source that they've heard it from someone within the organization, it's complete false, unless that person is trying to get us fired. But yeah, I would trust people that you know. Again, not every NHL insider is the person to trust. They might say they're an NHL insider. It doesn't mean they know anything. And quite frankly, you can get source information. Certainly has happened to me where the source is usually 95% right, but the one thing they're talking about, they're wrong, and that's 5% of the time. So definitely trust who you're getting your information from. I like what Hickey said, repeating what Wah said about you can have your team running around the D zone for 10 to 15 seconds and recover from it. Islanders all season have had 1 minute instances of this. Yeah. Again, you look back at the game against St. Louis, 3 goals in 32 seconds. That's not even a minute. 32 seconds where they just have, running around. And I think Kyle Palmieri told us after the loss to Tampa, he said, we can't just run around like we have our head, like a chicken with their heads cut off. And because this is what happens when you get caught running around, you lose your entire structure. You fall apart. You allow, again, that Barzal, not his fault. The pump fake, I think it was Gostisbehere with a sick pump fake, which allowed Drew Barzal in. He fed it to Mata. I mean, that's a great play. Now, but why did Barzal have to go to that guy? Someone else lost their man because the Islanders were running around. So yeah, I don't have to do a better job of that, because if they just take a second to breathe and get back to their structure, they're probably going to be able to recover in time without allowing a goal. Could we see Martin or Clutterbuck move to the deadline? So this is what I think is going to happen with them. If the Islanders are out of it, completely out of it by next week, which they probably won't be, I think Lou's going to do what he did with Andy Green and Zdeno Chara, where he goes to them and says, listen, if you want to go to a contender or fight for a cup, I'll try to make that happen. If you don't, I'm not going to move you. I think he's going to do that with Martin and Clutterbuck regardless. I think there will be teams calling about Cal Clutterbuck. Guys never won a cup. He said to Ethan Sears of the New York Post, I think it was a story he wrote yesterday, a good story, about how he said, listen, usually I just let those things happen. If this is it for me, outside of winning a Stanley Cup, I gave it everything I had. So maybe Cal Clutterbuck decides to go chase a cup. No one should have any hard feelings. That guy's been an absolute warrior for the Islanders, gave it his all. I don't see him wanting to leave. I feel like that's just the kind of guy Cal is. And for Matt Martin, I don't think we're going to get too many calls on him. Again, he's struggled this year to stay healthy. He's not the same player he once was, and he's the heart and soul of this group. There's a lot of guys that are. I don't see Martin leaving with his ties to Long Island. I think he'd rather just finish his career here if this is it for him. I think he has 45 games left after this year to reach 1,000. Maybe he comes back on a 1-year, $1 million deal, league minimum. I could see Cal coming back on a league minimum deal as well. It'll ultimately depend. I think we could see Cal move, but that'll be up to him, I think. Moving on here to Matt Riviere. Who is the most realistic trade target and who do we ship out after one of our best games of the year with these lines? Well, it doesn't mean a trade's happening tomorrow. Now, to me, if Luke could find a way to upgrade this group and get the lineup to be more balanced, right? Again, Nelson being on the top line is not ideal. I really do think Duclair in San Jose, no hard feelings to Oliver Wahlstrom and no hard feelings to the Islanders failing to develop him. It was everyone failed each other in a sense. The Islanders never gave him a real chance at a top six role, and Oliver Wahlstrom, injury hurt him, obviously. But Oliver Wahlstrom didn't take the opportunity and didn't run with it. Excuse me. Duclair is not going to cost a first-round pick. Duclair is a pending UFA and a really bad Sharks team playing on the top line. I think he has 8 goals. He has not had a great season, so his value is completely down. If Wahlstrom is not going to be given top 6 role, he is not going to develop as a bottom 6 guy. So there's no point in playing him in a bottom 6 role. If he is not going to develop here as a top 6 player, a 23-year-old reclamation project for a Sharks team not ready to win now, for the cost of Duclair, who you're losing anyway, and maybe a 5th-round pick, if even need be, I don't see how you don't do that. That seems the most realistic move for me now. Now, again, Tarasenko to me still makes sense if he's willing to waive his modified no-trade clause. Again, he said today that he would only move it to go to a contender. Again, depends. If the Islanders are not one of the teams on his 16-team no-trade contract, I believe he has that. I don't think it's a full no-trade. Let me just look that up here. Then he doesn't have a say, correct? So let me just look it up here. Vladimir Tarasenko. I wish I had the memory that I could just remember that stuff. But Tarasenko, again, $5 million cap hit. He has a full no trade clause. So my apologies. He would need to agree to go anywhere. So maybe the Islanders are off the table for him. But Toronto to me is someone that could be realistic for the Islanders. That being said, there are a lot of teams that are going to probably overpay for that guy. And the Islanders aren't in a situation. Yes, he has terms, so you're not losing him. But the Islanders have to trust that he's not having just a career year. Again, the difference with Bo Horvat is that Bo Horvat was having a really good year, a better year than he's ever had, but he's also been a really good player for a while. But Toronto undrafted, you love that. You love to see guys like that really find their game and score. But he's not having a career year after more or less being a bottom 6 scorer, middle 6 maybe if you're being nice there. I think teams are going to overpay badly for him, and I don't think the Islanders, given their lack of assets and their lack of first-round picks, really makes a lot of sense for the Islanders to go that route. So to me, if Tarasenko goes off the table, Duclair is probably a very realistic option. That's if the Islanders want to move on from Wahlstrom, because they easily could just, again, he's an RFA again, they could just bring him back. Moving on here. How about Bo? So Taylor says, how about Bo? So our great Jake Rodanis wrote a story tonight as Anthony Beauvillier was skating alongside Connor Bedard for a second straight game. He's on the final year of a 4-year deal with a $4.12 million annual cap hit. To me, the only way Bo comes back, whether it's now, whether it's in free agency, is if he's willing to take a 1/4 pay cut, a 1-year prove-it $1 million deal. Him and Matthew Barzal are best friends, still best friends. We were in Vancouver, got to speak to Bo, and Bo said when he was traded from the Islanders, Barzal took it harder than him. Barzal wouldn't really talk, not that he was ignoring it, but one-word text. And then talking to Barzal that night went and said he hung out with Beauvillier. They talked their own language when they were together. They've known each other since they were kids. They were roommates with Team Canada's development junior team ones. Bo broke his arm. I believe his arm or his leg. And they were roommates, and Barzal had to help him get dressed. They were really close. They both said they were like the jokesters of the locker room and things like that. And they're really close. And when we walked into that locker room in Vancouver and I mentioned Bo, Barzal was the biggest smile you've ever seen on a person's face. It was awesome. So they're really close. And you want to keep your clients happy, right? And if the Islanders could bring Bo back, I'm not saying he's a first-line answer, though it would be interesting to see Bo in his second stint with the Islanders come and join this top line and find it again. Scored one of the biggest goals in the recent era of Islanders hockey with that overtime win to force Game 7 against Tampa. That was insane. So maybe they bring him back. Again, I don't think it's a bad depth option this summer to bring him back on a 1-year, $1 to $1.5 million deal. He knows how to play in New York. He's done it before. And I don't think his career is over. Now, I do think he'll bounce around probably if he can't figure it out, but he's not playing with Bedard for fun. I mean, sure, Chicago's not playing for anything, but this is to showcase him, in my opinion, which is what Jake wrote in his story today. So could Bo be an option? Sure. Another one, Jordan Eberle, right? So I probably have a story on that tomorrow to see if that makes any sense. I mean, you think about it, Barzal, Horvat, Eberle. Last time Eberle was here was kind of him and Barzal, and there were line changes with him and Nelson, things like that. Could Eberle come back if he wants to come back? Certainly could, and we'll see if that happens. All right, so let's get to the Shane Pinto talk. Mike Wafchuk, what about Shane Pinto from Ottawa? Shane Pinto is from Franklin Square, New York. He did grow up a Ranger fan, but he would be a dream ad as your number 2 center. Dream ad. The problem is that Shane Pinto got suspended 41 games for gambling. We're not sure how Lou would feel about that. The other thing is that I believe that Pinto was going to hold out to start this year because I don't think he wants to be in Ottawa. Now, again, I'm putting words in his mouth just from the actions that we saw there. But he comes back since coming back off his injury and has been unreal. Now, he's a RFA with no arbitration rights. So unless he says and goes to Ottawa and says, I'm not playing another minute for you guys. You have to trade me, and I'm telling you where you're going to trade me, or I'm not going to show up, and I'm just going to lose value. That's the only way he would probably get moved. Now, the Islanders could also blow him away. They have Norris under contract for, I believe it's 7 years at like 7 point whatever. They have Bathurst in there. They could get Pajot back in the deal. They have centers. They don't, quote unquote, need Pinto, but a young kid at 20, I think he's 24 or 25, absolutely dominating right now. They have no reason to trade him, and the Islanders do not have the assets to blow other teams out of the water to get him. It would be a great ad for them. And then you have Horvat, Pinto, Cizikas, McLean. Beautiful. Down the middle. Pinto, again, Long Island native. When's the last time the Islanders had one? I know Palmieri is from Long Island, but he grew up in Jersey. He was like legitimately physically born here, but didn't live here. So it would be fun to see a guy from Long Island come back, especially a guy like Shane Pinto, who's very good, very electric, young guy. He would probably fit Wa's system to a T, but it would cost a lot. All right, I think that's it. That's all the questions we have. If you do have anything you do want to add, please just comment below. If not, we'll probably have chats. Again, we'll have a chat Saturday at some point before the Islanders battle the Boston Bruins. But thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the Elmonters YouTube channel. We do have a Substack as well. You can find it in most of my stories. You can follow that. You get the latest stuff every morning. So with that, the New York Islanders win their second straight game, defeating the Detroit Red Wings 5-3, scoring their first empty net goal of the year. Brock Nelson, 2 goals. Matthew Barzal, a huge goal. Sorokin with some big saves. And the Islanders now head into Boston looking to stay in the playoff race. Again, just to recap, 6 points back of Tampa Bay with 3 games in hand, 5 points back of the third-place Philadelphia Flyers with 1 game in hand. Stefen Rosner from the latest from the New York Islanders hockey news side of things with the Elmonters. Talk to you guys again soon.